Before the Lord returns, the scripture tells us that the nations will declare peace and safety. It shows us that the land of Israel and the city of Jerusalem will once again be at the center of the world's attention. Before the second coming, we will see that Israel and the surrounding nations will place their trust in a leader who will one day come, promising peace. And so the question is, are we in our world today seeing a road being paved for these things to soon take place? Stay tuned. Now, we don't normally talk about news and politics on this channel. That's not really our assignment. However, when major things are happening regarding Israel, and we start to see prophetic puzzle pieces seemingly come together, well, at that point we have a duty to look into it and to share. And so that's what we've done in the past. That's what we did with the Hosea prophecy videos. We looked at how many Bible prophecies were clearly fulfilled with the circumstances surrounding Israel and the Jewish people. The Jewish people being scattered among the nations after the death of Jesus was not a coincidence. It was prophesied. We saw that in the video in scripture. Israel becoming a nation again in 1948 was also not a coincidence. God foreshadowed it by allowing the birth of Abraham to be exactly 1948 years after Adam. Israel being able to amazingly defeat their enemies on multiple fronts within just 6 days, and then declaring victory on the seventh day was no coincidence either. Because throughout scripture, there are so many references to God delivering Israel and allowing them to see victory on the seventh day. And so when things happen with Israel that align with the apocalyptic texts, we have a duty to talk about it. And so for this reason, we must discuss the Abrahamic Accord. And so what we see happening with Israel now is huge. You know, this Abrahamic peace deal with Israel that was established a few weeks ago is without a doubt paving the way for major biblical prophecies to be fulfilled. And, you know, while with the coverage of this, you really only see President Trump and his face, and you see him signing the papers and getting the press, really. One thing we really need to explore is the man behind the scenes who really is the one responsible for making these deals happen. The man who has been in charge of all of this, Jared Kushner. And so, as many of you know, President Trump appointed his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, to manage Middle East relationships. And under Kushner's leadership in 2018, exactly 70 years since Israel became a nation in 1948, the U.S. recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and even established an embassy there. And that was really groundbreaking. And in retrospective, when you consider the Middle East progress taking place today, it becomes evident that one leading reason for Kushner advancing the Jerusalem embassy move was to initiate peace in the Middle East. In fact, from the very start of the Trump administration, as soon as Jared Kushner joined the team, the plan to establish a peace in the Middle East progressed like never before. In fact, Kushner himself revealed that one of the first international travels of President Trump was to the Middle East, with intentions of forming relationships there.
President Trump's been able to rebuild those relationships. His first trip as president was to Saudi Arabia in May of 2017, where he laid out the problems that were facing the region.
And so the Jerusalem embassy move was really an early step in bringing about this regional peace operation that has been in plan for years. And so the Jerusalem embassy declaration was a great thing, right? Big thing. But Kushner was not done yet. No. You see, after the Jerusalem embassy move, he was then somehow able to lead a U.S. initiative to invest $50 billion into the economy of the Middle East regions. He met with Israeli and Arabic leaders to discuss how this investment would allow for their region to thrive like never before. And he detailed how he would help them to develop an advanced digital society. He mentioned how he could help them expand trade, education, how healthcare systems would be revamped. And Kushner skillfully developed an extensive plan to train their leaders on how to achieve all of this. And so they were sold. And fast forward to a few weeks ago, under Kushner's leadership, the U.S. was able to broker one of the most pivotal deals of peace with the Israeli nation since its inception. So how did that happen? Well, Kushner was actually pretty straightforward about how that was able to happen.
We laid out a 180-page, very detailed plan that we got Israel to agree to negotiate on the basis of, that invests $50 billion into their economy, that allows them to double their GDP over 10 years, that can create 1 million new jobs, help their people have a much better standard of life. We also got Israel to agree to have them have self-determination, have a secure environment, and then in addition to that,
Kushner shows that one reason for the entire $50 billion investment into the region was to ensure that eventually the UAE and other Middle East regions would come together with Israel in peace. And so the point again is that the embassy being established in Jerusalem, the $50 billion being invested in the region, all of these things was to ensure that peace, this peace deal, the Abrahamic Accord, would be a success. That was the strategy from all of this activity from the start. And so now that the Abrahamic Accord has been established, their real goal is now possible.
And this opens the door for what I can only call unbridled trade, tourism, investments, exchanges between the Middle East, two most advanced economies. And you will see how the sparks fly on this. It's already happening.
And so, as you can see here, the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, shares how now prosperity with Israel can flourish, trade can expand, and Israel can be positioned to thrive like never before. And Jared Kushner also agrees that this accord is only the beginning of advancement for Israel.
I will just say today that this is a big breakthrough. This is something that's public. We have a lot of things that are happening privately right now that are quite excited. And I do believe, again, that over the next years, if the president is able to keep going forward, you're going to see some historic changes in the region that will really make the world a much safer and better place. Thank you.
Thank you, Jared. Appreciate it.
And so it's clear, we will be hearing a lot more regarding Israel very soon. And so again, if Bible prophecy shows that Israel will be at the center stage one day and that people will be saying peace and safety as they are now, well, we see why this is all a big deal, because we are now seeing the developments taking place to lead right into that reality. And so even though Trump is the president, let us remember who is the true mastermind behind this entire Middle East peace process? Kushner. In fact, he says that he has been working on this entire thing for quite some time.
What you saw yesterday was the first peace deal in the Middle East in the last 26 years. I've been working on this very closely with President Trump over the last 3.5 years. It took a lot to get to this point, but this is a dramatic breakthrough that will make the Middle East safer.
There have been many efforts to bring about this sort of peace and agreement with the Israeli region, but somehow Kushner pulled it off. And some would agree that only Kushner could have pulled it off. In fact, that's what Trump said.
If you can't produce peace in the Middle East, nobody can.
And some have suggested that one reason Kushner was able to achieve such success with Middle East peace and great relations with the Israeli prime minister is because he already knew the prime minister. You see, ironically, it was reported that the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, was a dear friend of the Kushner family for years. Yeah. In fact, there are many articles, and you can find them, plenty of them, detailing how Netanyahu would visit the Kushner house, and he knew Jared Kushner very well as a youth. His parents and Netanyahu were great pals. And actually, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said this himself.
I've known President Trump for many years, his team, some of whom I've known for many years too. Can I reveal, Jared, how long we've known you? Can I reveal, Jared, how long we've known you? Well, he was never small. He was always big. He was always tall. But
Yeah, he lets you know. Notice how he says, he knew him for a long time, and he wants to check in with him just to make sure it's okay if he can reveal how long they've had this relationship. And so, amazingly, before Jared Kushner was even in the White House as a peace negotiator, before he even married Trump's daughter, before he even really knew Trump, he knew the Israeli prime minister. You see, when you look at all of this, one could almost say his role to now be involved in peace negotiations with the Middle East was not just a coincidence, but was somehow destiny for him. And so, as I always say, keep your eyes on Israel, because really, as Kushner himself said, this is only the beginning.
4 years ago, my father-in-law asked me to work on peace in the Middle East. I've given it my all. There's still much work left to accomplish, but the Abrahamic Accords is a giant step forward. To have played a role in its creation, and I say this as the grandson of 2 Holocaust survivors, it means more to me and to my family than I can ever express. We will continue to pursue peace between Israel, the biblical homeland of the Jewish people, and its Arab and Muslim neighbors, and I have never been more hopeful about peace. While this peace agreement was thought by many to be impossible, the stage is now set for even more. Over the last 3.5 years, a lot of people describe the state of the Middle East as hopeless. But what I've felt over the last couple weeks is a new sense of optimism, and we must seize that optimism, and we must continue to push to make this region achieve the potential that it truly has.